So good evening, everyone. It is now 6:05 on 12:15, and I'll call our town council meeting to order. If we could kindly take a moment of silence to acknowledge all of those that are currently serving here and abroad and enabling us our freedom and safety. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I would ask if anyone in our audience is recording, and if so, could you please identify yourself? Seeing none, this meeting is being held virtually through a Zoom webinar. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. First order of business this evening. Jeannie, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
No, we do not.
Thank you. How about council comments? The only comment I'd like to make is, January 1's just around the corner here, and I will be sending out an email. And anybody watching our meeting tonight, this will be good information for us and you as well. We are going to be reorganizing all our boards. So Jeannie, I'll be asking for a list of our various committees and who are actually engaged in those committees at this point in time, and see if anybody has a change in heart, needs to switch things around and invite anybody new in that might fill those vacant seats, if any. Other than that, Mary, do you have a report for us this evening? And you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. I do. I did write a short one. I'm sorry you only got it today, but I wrote it this morning, so you had it hot off the press. It only has one item in it because most of my comments for tonight's meeting will be addressed on items later in the agenda. So I wanted to make you aware in writing of the town's acquisition today of an outdoor skating rink, which is going to be placed on center field as soon as it can be assembled. It was ordered today, so it should be delivered within 72 hours, I would hope. And I'm told it's quite easy to put it together. The idea of a outdoor skating rink was first brought to my attention by Donna Prather last summer when I was taking a tour of Pine Knoll. There was a neighbor of that camp area that wanted to put an outdoor skating rink on the tennis court. But we thought that we could probably find a better place for one. So as the months went by, conversation continued between Donna and the Recreation Commission, and they came up with the idea of putting it in the center of town. So I agreed to allow that use. And I think that the announcement of the skating rink and the possibility of having that outdoor activity just uncorked the champagne bottle of enthusiasm in the town. As I said in my report, in less than 24 hours or just over 24 hours, they raised over $8,400 in donations for said rink. The first of which was from Councilor Page. So unfortunately, he's not here right at the moment, but so the community response was really sensational in my opinion. And Steve and I will be preparing a motion in the near future for acceptance of those funds. And so I just wanted to make you aware of the excitement that this is generating. And we hope that it'll be an opportunity for everybody to enjoy the cold weather a little bit more than they might otherwise in our COVID winter. So that's the only item in my report for tonight.
Thanks, Mary. As you recall, at our last council meeting, there were some amendments that we wanted to make to the minutes, open session minutes from our November 10th meeting. Has everybody had a chance? And if you had, I would entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to, unfortunately, I'm having a little issue opening up part of my computer, but I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for the November 10th open session meeting.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll roll call vote this. I am a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Okay, we have 6-0. Thank you. I don't believe we have anything under communications and correspondence and announcements. Jeannie, you don't see anything as well, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Nothing.
No public hearings this evening, and under orders of the day, licensing matters, we are revisiting a table discussion on the approval of the 2021 license renewals continued from our December 8th meeting. Kathy, can you bring us up to date on that?
Yes, thank you. Last week, there were some outstanding questions about the status of a handful of licensees, so we agreed to set the matter aside until this evening. And in the last week, Jeannie and I worked together through Kevin Duquette, our building commissioner, and Donna Bowman, our health inspector, to verify the status of those particular businesses or licensees. And I've attached that to the spreadsheet for your review. Everything, as you can see from my notes, are in order. And it allows us now to move forward. All other licenses are in order. Those that have applied and are current with their business inspection or building inspection, as well as their renewal fee, will simply have to come back to see Jeannie and pick up their license for 2021.
Sounds great. Would you like to present a motion to approve?
I can do that, yes. I move to approve the license renewals for 2021 as presented, contingent upon each licensee complying with their annual building inspection if required, and submitting the total renewal fee.
I
Okay,
second that motion.
thank you. We have a motion and seconded. This will be a roll call vote again. I'll start from the top with myself. I am a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
Thank you. Under financial matters, we have an update on our capital projects. And fortunately, we have our finance director, Steve, here. Steve, would you like to give us up to date on your findings?
Sure. What we've done, we've compiled up through basically an update of through 2020 for our capital projects, which a copy was sent to you. I should point out, Councilor Page pointed out to me, and it's because I have large fat digits, that the under police, under Fund 3345, the balances of June 30th, 2019 was not $463,000. It was actually $46,000. It was a finger punch error that I made on there. It should be 46,307.51. The other thing I'd like to point out too is that, as I said, this does not include the 2021 projects because we have not gone out or even started to go out for bonding for any 2021 projects yet. We are waiting probably till the springtime. We need the audited financial statements for FY21 or FY20 rather, sorry. And that's just about completed. And then, so as we get towards the end of the fiscal year, we'll look at what our needs are and make sure we get the bonding out and get everything we need to do to avoid yet another ratings call that can be expensive, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to do. We are also continuing with this. This is a draft, as I say, through 2020. We would also, by the end of, well, as soon as possible, we're going to have a complete one for you that you can review and ask any questions on.
Sounds great. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Pat?
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Pat.
I'd really love to see page numbers on these,
I'm sorry. I'll get that for you.
and I know that's difficult.
No, what I'll do, Counselor, what I'll do tomorrow is I'll go back in format so it has a page number on it. I apologize for that.
Okay. Ralph, I know you're just chiming in. Welcome. And before we relieve Steve, he did make a change to a recommendation that you made. Do you have any other questions for Steve at this time?
Mike, I've got a question. Mike?
Stand by one. Ralph, are you all set?
So actually, I do have a couple questions, Steve. I noticed a lot of these have been completed, the capital. So do we take those off of this list and put them into like an archived area? And that way there, we only have a tabulation in the future of what's ongoing. And then
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, then I noticed some were 100% completed, but there was still money left over. And at what point does that money, do we have to make a motion to turn that money back to general fund or wherever it belongs?
To your first question, yes, we will be archiving the ones that are 100%. As I said, this was a graph so you could see where we are and what was completed. As far as the money that's left over, we will be coming back. I'll be coming back in front of you, in front of the council to ask that it be reappropriated back to general fund in the future, in the near future.
And can I have one follow-up? A couple of those were bonded. And I don't have the sheet in front of me, but if there's money left over from something that was bonded,
We can't reappropriate that out. I have to get the final how to do that, but you have to put it towards a project of a like kind.
exactly. Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Thank you. Steve, and to just add on to Pat's comment, also a date on the document would be helpful so we know we have the current version.
Absolutely.
And one other question. On account 3233, it shows a remaining balance of $22,700 and some dollars. And the original amount appropriated was 100,000.
Yes.
But it's only 20% complete. So it
That,
sounds like it's pretty well overrun. Is this going to be coming back to us for additional monies?
I certainly hope not. I honestly don't know, Counselor. This number I got from DPW, so I have to get a hold of DPW and kind of go through it with them. I wanted to get you a copy of what we're looking at, so this is our starting point and to go through for these types of questions.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Patrick?
Couple more questions. Thank you, Mike. Steve, I noticed that the last time we received this report, there was a funds turned back column, which kind of let us know that guaranteed these are the funds that will not be spent right away. And I see that's disappeared.
That was hidden because honestly, to me, it was confusing. It's the remaining balance column as a 12/1/2020. That's in effect that we have to go back through this now and finalize any costs, et cetera, and then have a final number. Funds turned back to me was like, this is definitely the number, and I don't necessarily know would say that's the case in all projects.
Okay, so you're implying that if the project is 100% complete, we can assume the remaining balance is likely the amount to be returned.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep. And what I'll do when it comes to the point where we have the funds to be turned back, the motion, it will detail each, be almost like this, but only with the ones with money being turned back, and here's what we're turning back, and any explanation that may be appropriate.
Sure. And I have another. Just a suggestion, and I don't know whether Munis can do this, but as Ralph suggested, Councilor Ralph suggested, we could move the completed off this list and reduce it. I would like to see them, but I'd like to see them in a separate part of the list. If they could be, I don't know whether Munis can move all the ones that are completed to one section so that we can see historically the 5 years that we like to see, and then the ones that are still active by themselves.
Absolutely. What we'll do in the final version, you'll see it'll be what I envision is seeing, this is the current years, this is what are open, and then this is what's been closed, either the last, and the date it was completed, kind of thing. So there'll be, in essence, 3 sections when we're all done, said and done on it. And hopefully I'll be, but we can definitely break them out. When we sort them and pull the completed projects off, we'll have them in a separate section that'll be attached to the back of it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mike.
Welcome. Any other questions for Steve at this time? Well, Steve, thanks for your time this evening and valuable information. We'll look forward to seeing you next year.
I look forward to it.
Nothing else under financial matters. Under old business, we have the shared local public health update. There are no supporting documents at this time. This is an update. And I would ask Mary to basically give us dialogue, what's new, what's changed, and I'm sure you must have Amy and Sarah for support in the audience if needed. Excuse me, Pat?
Mike, excuse me, my agenda indicates that there's a first quarter performance, financial performance from Steve as well. Has that been removed? I think it reads
Yeah.
first quarter financial report,
Yes,
FY21.
it's on mine as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, do you have a report that you want to dovetail in
Yeah,
this
I'll
report?
give you an update. The first quarter performance is through September 30th. As a town, we're doing remarkably well. Budget and revenue wise, we're approximately 24% of what we budgeted, which is pretty good considering the times. Also, keep in mind that in the expenditure side of it, which again, we're on pace to be 25% of our budget, we also have the full year of the retirement contribution, as well as most of our debt payments already done. So as the year goes further out, it'll be turned more towards the good, if that makes sense. So we're going along. The department heads and Mary should be given great kudos because they are living well within their means and are making sure that the town doesn't suffer anything as far as core functions go. I don't think anybody, we've not missed like picking up trash on that. Everything has been spot on. And I think we're doing, as a town, doing pretty well. So that's as far as the budgetary. I also like to bring up our tax rate, as you know, has been approved by the DOR at $21.06, which was less than what we originally thought it was going to be in the budget side of things. Diane Bishop from Assessors, Olga Bonet, my assistant accountant, and Don Fonte and her staff were invaluable in getting that recap done and helping me get it done so that we could get the bills out. Along those lines, Merry Christmas, everybody. Third quarter tax bills will be going out by December 30th.
Yes.
It makes it by the deadline, so we're able to get that and be able to have a due date quarterly, which will help us cash flow wise. So those are a couple of big highlights. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is our 2020 audit is finishing up. And we'll have that shortly. And we're in the process of working on free cash and Schedule A for the state.
Great. Sorry I went by that. I was having problems with my printer and it chopped off right at that segment. And Pat, you were our safety net, so thank you both. And you have another question for Steve?
Yes, I would like Steve to get his name on the bottom of this report so that we can give him the credit. Because he did send this report out to all of us and I looked at it and I said, is this from Mary? Is this from Steve? Or is this from Olga? I'm not sure.
Next time I'll make sure I do that.
Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry to be picky on the little details. But I
No,
think
anything to make
it
it
really
more
helps us
efficient.
because we're so far afield now. We feel we're so far away.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. Those are good comments. I like that.
Yes. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Ralph?
Steve, just have a question as far as tax revenue coming in. Has it been steady? Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I know the restaurants are probably off. I'm assuming any meals tax revenue through sales of liquor, stuff like that. I mean, is this something we projected for? Are we way off? Are we where we want to be?
We factored it in, but I It's down, obviously. I think no one knew how long this would be, so it's not as much as it was this time a year ago, but it's consistent to what we've been expecting. As far as the personal property and the real estate revenue, that's been remarkably consistent. The taxpayers of East Long Meadow should be very proud. They've not, it's gone up a little bit. Some people are facing tough times, but for the most part, it's been remarkably consistent with what it's been in prior years.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, let me see what we have here. Jeannie, I'm looking at that as well. If our host could convert William Kazulis to a panelist, I'm not sure if he has a question for Steve.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Casellas. Do you have a question for Steve?
No, I'm the president of the dog park, and I see that we're on the agenda, so I didn't know if that was coming up or not.
Actually, let me just see how far down we are here. We are not in that section right now.
It's under financial matters on my agenda.
No.
Okay.
Mike?
So that was under CPC, and our next meeting, hopefully with CPC, will be the second Tuesday in January. We did have a revised agenda, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so under old business, I was starting to say our shared local public health update. Mary, maybe you could open a conversation, and I will be watching for Amy or Sarah or anybody that would like to chime in that might have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Mike. In preparing for tonight, I know some of you were looking for documents that were not forthcoming, but the reason for that is that this is just a discussion, an ongoing discussion of the topic and the concept of shared health. To get ready and not take a lot of extra time of yours tonight, I reviewed the minutes of the June 23rd council meeting at which this topic was discussed at some length. And I went through the questions that different counselors raised as issues about the implementation of any intermunicipal agreement with the town of Long Meadow. And I know one of the questions that Councilor Page raised was on the budget and how there would be savings. And the very simple answer to that is the budget has not yet been worked out. Whatever the budget amounts are, there will be savings to East Long Meadow because, for example, now Long Meadow's budget is approximately $150,000 and ours for salaries is $228,000. So if you combine those two numbers, you get $388,000. And if you divide it by 2, you're down to $194 a piece. So we would save $34,000 in that mathematical example going forward into the next fiscal year. There's also grant money that will be available. The governor's budget that was just passed has included $1.7 million in SAFC money, as well as $10 million to be infused into communities that are in the implementation phase of shared health services. So the answer is we still don't have a finite answer, and that's the reason I've not given you an IMA to review for signature. We have downsized the IMA that was last before you. It's now about in its 15th iteration. Council over the summer looked at that document and raised some questions with a mindset that we were trying to create a district and therefore we would have to start from scratch. But I think the initial analysis by that attorney was incorrect and that we weren't seeking to establish a district. We're just trying to do essentially an MOA for shared services, which is a much simpler procedure and concept. Kathy Hill raised the comment last time about her concern about how the potential costs for OPEB and workers' comp and health insurance would be handled. And subsequent to that meeting, we did have conversation with the town manager in Long Meadow, and we've agreed that those costs would be shared 50-50. The OPEB, once it's determined, and we'd have to do it actuarially to, assuming anybody made a 10-year longevity commitment with the town of East Long Meadow, but the workers' comp and the OPEB liabilities would be paid equally on a retroactive basis. All health insurance and other insurance type benefits of any new employee that the town of East Long Meadow hired would be paid prospectively 50-50 by Long Meadow's contribution to us. So I feel as though we've answered that question. On June 23rd, there was a motion that was made and then rescinded because of some confusion. And I admit that I think part of that was due to the uncertainty of the finances, which, as I sit here, I guess they're still somewhat uncertain. But that at that time, the matter was moved, it was tabled to August 11th. And I don't frankly know exactly why it didn't reappear on the agenda on August 11th. I have a feeling it was because of our budget situation and how we met twice in July and had our 1/12 budget discussions and our somewhat late filed fiscal budget for fiscal 21. I don't know if that was the case, but that seems likely to me. And then when I was reviewing other minutes and my own reports from September and October, I think the nature of ordinary business just kind of swept us away, and this matter was out there pending in everyone's consciousness, but never brought back to your attention. Sometime in early November, the town manager of Long Meadow called me and said, you know, if you could bring that back to your council or let me know either yes or no, because my health director is in fact retiring on December 31st. And that's a fact that was well publicized to all the parties 2 or 3 years ago. Beverly Hirschhorn has reached the end of her career in Long Meadow, and she'll be leaving their employment very shortly. So that prompted a need on Long Meadow's part to kind of bring this back into everyone's attention. So since November, or shortly before that call came from Lynn, I think I reported to you at a meeting that the issue was going to be tabled for the foreseeable future. So here we are right back in front of you with the same issues. But all we're really looking for tonight is your approval or your disapproval to go forward and try to nail down the remaining details on the budget issues, the financial issues. I mean, I've been back and forth with the town manager in Long Meadow about increasing a 50-50 contribution to perhaps a 60-40 contribution, their side to us. They seem to think that's a little bit high, and it may well be. So they've counter-proposed with a smaller percentage, which may be low, which I think is low, but it may also be accurate because we just don't know what the actual operating numbers will be. So the reason I'm advocating tonight that you at least make a final decision one way or the other to give me the authority to go forward with this is that before we can get to any operational budget, we obviously have to hire employees. And before we hire, we have to advertise for them. And before we advertise for them, we have to figure out who they are and where we're going to seek, place these ads and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of dominoes that have to fall before you get the final IMA. And because so much effort has been put into it by not so much me, but many of my predecessors, some of whom are in the audience tonight, and I know want to speak to you, at least Dr. McAdoo and perhaps Karen Robitaille and Amy's in the audience as well. But we don't want to belabor the same points that you've heard over and over again. You're familiar with the concept, and what the initiative represents. It's economies of scale, shared services, increasing the public health awareness and opportunities for residents of both communities. I feel strongly that both communities will benefit. And I just want to know if you, as a council, want me to continue to pursue the detail, which I'm happy to do. I'd be more than happy to do, but I only want to do it with your blessing, so to speak. So I'll yield my remaining time to whomever wants to take it.
Okay, right now I'm scanning the page here. We have 9 attendees. And the first hand I see up is Sarah McAdoo. So if our host could bring Sarah in. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come back, and appreciate, Mary, what you've shared so far. As a resident of the town that's been volunteering on the board, I appreciate everything that Mary has shared. I think I want to just point out we aren't still in the middle of a pandemic. That is not going to resolve, and we just want to strengthen the public health services in the town. And we have some significant gaps that I think that this particular partnership will benefit the town significantly, not just now, but into the future. And only 3 quick points I want to make, because as Mary pointed, this information that you have available to you and we've presented before. But I just want to highlight 3 things to your attention. Mary mentioned about the economies of scale. I know there might be some concern about, well, how do you divide up, people's time and what's the benefit to East Longmeadow, which Mary has shared with you before. But I want to point out that one of the strategies in this type of partnership is to become more efficient. So it isn't a situation where you're going to be dividing and conquering, having one person, one location, another. I just want to mention that we're definitely looking at creating processes that would help with efficiency and being very effective. The other thing to take into consideration is because of the work that has been done so far, we were actually able to be in a much stronger position to receive some funding, as the state has been allocating funding to improve local health services. Mary mentioned the act that was recently passed. And I think because we were already doing this work, we were able to receive some funding. And the challenge is that the longer that, we don't have the ability to move this forward and think about it, we lose an opportunity. Since August, there's been opportunities to receive more funding, which we have not been able to receive. And that's important to know, that in the middle of pandemic, that we should have as many resources as we can to really strengthen our public health infrastructure. And just the last thing is that I think that this is, a little bit bigger than only for this one moment in time. This is sort of the plans that are going to be moving forward from the state's perspective in terms of cross-jurisdictional sharing of services. Because that's been a significant challenge to the way that we have been responding. So as other towns will have an impact on this, we will not be doing this, the town of East Longmeadow is not going to be doing this in isolation. This is going to come back around at a different point. And it'd be really important to consider how we're going to be in a much stronger position to be able to do this by having this particular contract and partnership available to us. So I just wanted to share those additional thoughts. And thank you for the opportunity to come back and speak to the town council. We've been always working in partnership. Public health does everything in partnership. Nothing can be done in isolation. So we appreciate having worked with you through this whole entire process and your support in getting us through the point that we're able to be a competitive entity. And if you have the opportunity to look on the Massachusetts Department of Public Health website, when they talk about that particular SAFE grant and the funding, you will notice that they have 2 groups that received funding. One is existing public health districts and 4 other groups. And out of the 4 other groups, East Longmeadow was one of them. So that's kudos to the work that you have helped us do and laid out over the last, I think now 2 years or so. So we appreciate that support, and we hope that we have the opportunity now to continue doing this work and supporting and strengthening the public health infrastructure of East Long Meadow. And our goal is, we're hoping that with that stronger infrastructure, we can get back to school, we can get back to work, not only now, but also be able to mitigate any other challenges in our public health system that this town may face. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Sarah. I do see an additional colleague. I see Karen Robitaille here as well. If our host could bring Karen in, that would be great. Hi, Karen. Hi,
Good
Karen.
evening, everyone. It's so great to see you. Thank you for giving us some time to talk to you very briefly. And I just want to say a few things. The first being that I am also obviously a resident of East Long Meadow and have been for pretty much my entire life. I'm a product of the schools, as were all of 4 of my children. I am deeply, deeply committed to this town. I feel very strongly that anything we can do to support our public health infrastructure, both as a state and as a town, as a municipality, should absolutely be done. And right now we are living the perfect example of why. There is a saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And strengthening our public health infrastructure will not only help us in times that like we find ourselves right now, but also help us become a healthier community and a more attractive community, which will help us in many, many ways. This particular initiative is the wave of the future. I can state that definitively. As an employee of the Department of Public Health, this is the vision for the future, especially in these smaller towns that cannot provide the level of public health services that are absolutely necessary and that we see now are necessary. This is the vision of the future, both from an economic standpoint and from a public health standpoint. That absolutely makes sense. We started working on this in November of 2017. 3 years we as a board have been working on this. We have received over $100,000 in grant funding to work on this. We have created a plan and we want to move it forward. And I thank you very much for the time and the opportunity to express to you my passion for this project and my full support for this project. Thank you.
All right, Karen, thank you for your time as well. We appreciate your time and efforts. I'm scanning right now our list of attendees. I don't see other hands up, any other hands up right now at this point. Mary, do you have any other comments? You're muted right now, but.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. But just so you know, just as an aside, to show you the level of detail that we are exchanging between town managers, Lynn Simmons offered the other day that Long Meadow would be the host community if we were disinclined to go forward as the host community. So that would raise a whole host of other questions regarding our current health department. Would they then become employees of Long Meadow? And if this didn't work, would we have some sort of a guarantee of their return to our employ? It seems somewhat cumbersome to do that since we have a fully functioning health department, but I think it shows only the level of their commitment to it and their desire to see it happen. And lastly, one other thing that Dr. McAdoo impressed on me that I should have realized myself, but this is if it were to go forward, there are quarterly meetings of the respective boards of health to assess the capacity and the performance and the efficiency of the initiative. And lastly, if there was any doubt in my mind as if it did go forward and it was not working, I would not hesitate to inform you of that. There's an exit strategy built into the most recent IMA that allows either community to exit. There's no commitment beyond 6 months. So I think there's a lot of safeguards built in that we've tried to address. And we'll be happy, as I said a few minutes ago, to keep going with those details, but only if you advise me to do so. So, thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. I'd entertain a motion. Motion to authorize our TM to move forward with the shared health concept. Do I have a motion?
So Mike, I will make a motion. I move to authorize the town manager to move forward with the shared local health agreement with the town of Long Meadow.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mike? So I'll start. I think it's been incredible over the last 3-4 years what our health department's done. We've come from a part-time health inspector to a full-blown department. Obviously, our budget shows that. I look at our department right now, and with the exception of a health nurse, I think we're a fully functioning department. I think we're giving the town of East Long Meadow everything that they need. And I personally don't see a benefit with joining with Long Meadow at this time. I think we have everything. I think it's Long Meadow that's lacking. And call me selfish, I'm not willing to share what we have. I don't think we need to going forwards, and that's my feeling on it.
Thanks, Ralph. Marilyn?
Thank you, Mike. I have a question and then I have a comment I'd like to make. The question is, currently with the health director retiring in Long Meadow, there is a half position of a nurse that currently is present, or has that nurse resigned? Can anyone answer that question?
Defer to Mary.
I think I was told yesterday by Amy that that nurse had resigned,
Okay.
but Amy's in the audience and she may
Okay.
have more up-to-date information
Amy
than I
got her
do.
hand up, Mike.
Just think, okay. I'm looking and
There she is.
Hi.
there
Hi,
she-
everybody.
Hi.
It's been a really long time. Maryland, they had a 75 or a 69% nurse. She resigned this summer, and they have someone right now who's doing their COVID trace back and quarantining. I'm not sure what her percentage is, but they have nursing staff.
Okay, all right. So that's the position that we would cut in half for East Long Meadow.
No, the agreement states that we would have a full-time nurse that then would be split in half, 50-50. And that person right now is not at full-time.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Amy. I do have a comment to make.
You're welcome.
I don't know if anyone else has any questions for Amy. No, okay. I reached out to Amy in an email a couple of weeks ago, I guess, because I had watched the Board of Health meeting and I was amazed at what our town has been doing with health. And I knew this because I knew the caliber of our health department. I knew when we went into COVID that we would be well taken care of because of the initiative that our town took to establish this department well before COVID even hit. Yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I can just imagine what things would have been like for our community had we not had these amazing folks working for our residents. In considering this initiative that's been before the council, long before I became a counselor, I've thought long and hard. I'm a healthcare provider by career, so I know the importance of this type of program. But I am focusing on a but. I'm looking at our people. I'm looking at our folks who are currently serving our town. Just 2 weeks ago, Amy told me how out straight they were, that it's crazy. Those were maybe not the exact words, but that was what I took from the conversation. So in my email to her, I suggested, since we have a well-established department and our need is for just, and I say just, a public health nurse, why not share a position? We share other positions. We share a veterans officer position. Why not share a nursing position? That would give us the complement, the full complement of what we need, but it doesn't take our department and use it to rescue another community that made different choices in how they planned out their staffing module. Based on the information I reviewed in conversation with Amy, plus she set up a meeting with me and Sarah McAdoo and Mary McNally. And so we discussed a lot of these issues, the four of us, and I felt like, Long Meadow certainly is a community that deserves a good Board of Health, but our town shouldn't be asked to rescue it with our people who are out straight and crazy. I know that there will be hiring of new staff, but we're not sure about the finances. Long Meadow has just agreed or volunteered to be the host community and with all of our employees. And so I struggle with this. But what sealed it for me was our last meeting when Paul Morissette spoke to us about his need for 2 more emergency management, not emergency management, but paramedic EMTs for our ambulance program. We are 30% higher in calls than Long Meadow with 3 less people. And our staff, our EMTs are burning out. I'm concerned that we're going to take our established health department and ask them to go into partnership with another community and then expect that they will do their responsibilities in half the time because now they were required to meet the needs of another community. And yes, it's nice to save money, but sometimes it's not always about money. I'm concerned about the health and well-being of our folks that are crazy and, just working constantly to meet the needs of our own community right now. I think that there's a possibility to share a position. I would like us to perhaps research looking at a nurse position, and then Long Meadow needs to hire their own health inspector and move forward on their particular needs. I'm just not convinced that this is the right timing for East Long Meadow to stretch a department that's working nonstop right now. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Is there any further discussion? Pat?
Thank you, Mike. My recollection in speaking with Amy back in the summer was that she had decided to withdraw her position temporarily. I know Mary mentioned before that she wasn't certain how that all came about, but I believe, I'm not putting words in Amy's mouth, that she felt that things were so much up in the air, there was so much going on, that it would be better if she pulled back and didn't insist that go on the August, September sessions. So that was her reaction to try to help us through our budget situation in the summer. I did a lot of investigating back in June when the subject was first raised in detail, because I was led to believe at that time that the state's desire for more partnerships, more health partnerships, doesn't really have a deadline. And the only urgency really was simply the opportunity of the Long Meadow opening. I thought the proposed contract was just very, very confusing. And I'm glad that Mary has looked at that and realized that it needs a lot of work and that it looks like they're cleaning that up. When we came to the financial aspects, it appeared that we assumed that OPEB would be covered fairly somehow. There would be a benefit mentioned that time around 26,000. And I think I heard today that the benefit might be, all things being equal, 32,000 to the plus. if all the grants were actually received. And we're sure that that was very likely, and I accept that. Bottom line, I didn't see a huge benefit to East Long Meadow at the time, but I saw a lot of potential liabilities and the issues that that Councilor Maryland has raised over liabilities and concerns over who's going to do what and how many people are going to be needed. It was really hard to quantify those health responsibilities. And finally, the concern I had was though several pros were presented, there were no cons other than Long Meadow's submission. And as we know, we really like to hear pros and cons so we can consider the cons and say, no, that's not so bad, or no, I don't agree with that, it's not a con. But we don't hear cons, and I didn't hear any tonight. At that time, I felt there wasn't enough benefit to East Long Meadow demonstrated, and I joined the vote to table the proposal. I have heard more positive things today that would lead me to perhaps change my mind, but I haven't really heard anybody say anything about cons other than Maryland. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Pat. Kathy?
Thank you. I think the con for me or for the town is in this arrangement, as I'm listening to it, I don't challenge the benefits of a partnership or the fact that given a partnership, we would be eligible for or have been eligible for some nice grant money. But it seems to me that East Long Meadow is doing all the heavy lifting here. And I'm not personally happy with a 50-50 split in terms of making this go forward. I'm not sure I'm happy with a 60-40. And so to one of Mary's statements that there seems to be some appetite for a slight movement on behalf of or so the sentiment is from the Long Meadow manager, I need to see a lot more movement before I feel that we are benefiting when we're putting all of our staff on the line here. I know with COVID that our departments have some swing schedules and we work remotely so that not all folks are in the office at the same time. And I'm told that that's true with Amy being working more remote than in the office. And I'm curious to know if this were to go through and our health director is now overseeing 2 towns, how could there possibly be time to entertain remote working from home? So I'd be curious to know how that might look.
Okay. Marilyn?
You know, my apologies. When I was making my explanation, I left out the key piece of information. When Paul Morissette explained to us why our calls were 30% higher than Long Meadows with 3 less people, and that's why we needed more staffing, he explained that it was the demographics of East Long Meadow. It's how we are as a community and everything that's within our borders that drives our need for more ambulance runs. And it's those same things in terms of more restaurants, more health inspections, more agencies. We're just a different community. And the needs as the town grows, and even in the midst of a pandemic, the needs are greater right here, right now, than they would be across the town line. And I would love to save a lot of money, but we're not talking like we were talking dollars and cents when we went into the dispatch arrangement. I would like to focus more on the people who are serving our community right now. And I'm curious to know how difficult it would be taking on another community based on the kinds of pressure that they're experiencing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other for a discussion? Hearing and seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mike, excuse
Yes.
me, Dr. McAdoo has her hand up.
Okay. I'm going to ask our host to convert her from an attendee to a panelist. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to point out there were two concerns that were raised in terms of not having the cons. In that 3-year period of time, we worked with both towns as well as the State Department to get a lot of the information that is evidence-based. In other words, what is the model that would work most efficiently and effectively for a town like East Long Meadow with the particular demographics and the work that we're currently doing at that time. So the two models that we presented, which are documented in a document that you received before, plays out the pros and cons of both of those models. And based on those, the recommendation was made. So that document has those pros and cons for two of those models. So you have that available to you. If you want to review that, I'll provide you some additional information relative to that. The other thing, I know there is a significant concern about what does East Long Meadow lose out. We've worked very hard to use the best information to give to you. We all live here. We would never compromise East Long Meadow's ability to serve the town as fully as it has. And the town has been served because of the infrastructure you currently have that was built. So in other words, we're hoping to sustain that and strengthen that over time. We would never compromise the East. We live here. I have my 4 children, just the same thing as Karen was sharing with you. We've invested here. I've been here over a decade or more. All my 4 children have gone through the public school system. I volunteer by sitting on boards. I have done that in elementary schools. So I would never compromise the ability of this town to be able to prosper. So, you know, we really worked very hard to make sure that we were providing the best model and the best fit for the town based on the population. We use a community health needs assessment, which provides us all the data that helps us to understand what are the needs of the community, which in there was a small needs assessment that was done by the Pioneer Valley Planning Institute that showed what were the basic health concerns of the town. And in fact, we were able to advocate and apply for funding that gave us additional funding to look at to do a new needs assessment to help us understand the needs of the town of East Long Meadow. And that would also help us to understand what else are the needs of Long Meadow as well in order to do these shared services. So, you know, I hope we did, well, not I hope, I actually do know, I was sitting at the table and volunteered the time to be there, is that we did due diligence in doing the research to make sure that we were giving the best model for this town. So if you really take the time to go back, you will see a lot of those concerns you have addressed in those documents. And I hope that that might provide you the information that you need to make a decision tonight.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, as previously, Mary, muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo very briefly a couple things that Dr. McAdoo just said, albeit in a slightly different context. From my seat, I see this initiative as an opportunity for East Long Meadow to be a leader community in the region. I know there are misgivings. We don't know how they will play out unless we take the chance and go forward. There's built-in safeguards that if, as she just said, and as Karen Robital said, being vested in the community and being the healthcare professionals, I personally would defer to them. I realize it's not my choice here, it's yours. But I feel like if we don't take the chance, we'll never know how successful we could have been. And I would also point out that Long Meadow may be benefiting more in the initial phase of this on a financial basis. But I'll posit for your consideration the fact that they have contributed their town accountant and their town manager as board of director chair, as well as their procurement officer to Westcom district for over a year now at no assessment to any of the other member communities. And we've been able, in our experience in Westcom, to sort of draft off of the willingness of Long Meadow to join Westcom before we did, And we've had the benefit of mistakes that were made that they suffered from that we have been the beneficiary of because we have that experience. So I would hope that you would at least move it forward from tonight and give us an opportunity to flesh out the details of this and have some faith that in the first quarterly review, if it's not working, if our employees are working too hard or are tapped out or unable to perform or any level of service in town is being diminished, that it will end. But we won't know that unless we try it. So that's it for me. That was Mike. Thank you, Mike.
You're very welcome. Is there any further discussion from the council? Don, I saw your hand up first.
I'm not making this motion, but I was just throwing it out there for possibility. Does it make sense if we have the authorization of town manager to move forward with a shared local public health agreement with the proviso that the Long Meadow share be at least 55% versus 45 or greater? And put that in there, or would that be too detrimental?
I would think that we have a motion on the floor right now, and that motion's been seconded. That motion would have to be declined or amended.
Well, I'm considering making that amendment. I just want to kind of throw it out for discussion before I would that create a cloud or burden would be a big problem, or would that be workable? And if it is workable, I'll make that motion, that amendment.
Kathy?
Do we have a motion on the floor? I thought we just went.
We do.
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
All right, I'm sorry.
Require a roll call vote. Patrick?
Thank you, Mike. I have a question, and that is, I assume that if we allow this to go forward, that Mary can sign the contract. She has the authority to sign the contract. That doesn't come back to us, so we do not have another opportunity other than Mary's assurance that if she doesn't like it, she won't sign it, and if it doesn't work out, she'll end it. Is that correct?
I believe it is, but I'll defer to Mary.
I think you're stating it. Oh, wait, sorry. Can you hear me now, Pat?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're stating it correctly, but I would bring it back to you. I would bring the IMA back to you for review. But yes, I do have the authority to sign it.
So I thought.
And yeah, I guess I'm asking you to trust me that if I thought it wasn't working for us, I would terminate it.
That's what I said.
That's what you said, yeah.
Yeah.
I meant I would bring the IMA to you for review because you've seen prior iterations and now you could see the streamlined one.
That'd be cool.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you, Mary. Ralph, did you have another question, or you all set? Yeah.
Not a question, just a statement. Like I said, I've heard everything. I've heard from our Board of Health. I just want to reiterate, I don't think at this time we should be going forwards. I think we should look at possibly a shared health nurse. The stress on our employees, adding to it and all. And I'm looking ahead to our town growing. I mean, we just created a mixed-use village district, which is going to add considerable number of residents in our town. And our health department, we've done very well growing it, making it what East Long Meadow wants for it. And I'm against the shared health nurse or the health department. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, this is a roll call vote. I will start with Pat Henry.
Yes.
Ralph Page.
No.
Don Anderson.
No.
Marilyn Richards.
No.
Tom O'Connor.
No.
Kathy Hill.
Yes.
And I am a no. No further discussion. Okay. Under new business. The first topic is our police chief appointment. I believe Mary will bring us up to date from day one, which started the posting of the jobs and the accepting of resumes, to where we currently are this evening. And I would just like to remind everybody that if we are going to head into a discussion toward one's character, that we have reserved a session, an executive session for that purpose. That being said, Mary, would you like to make the presentation?
Oh, she's muted.
Sorry, I kept making that mistake over and over again tonight. It's my pleasure tonight to offer my appointment of Deputy Chief, the Greenfield, Massachusetts Deputy Chief, Mark Williams, as the next police chief for the town of East Long Meadow. You have Mark Williams' cover letter to the HR department in town, as well as his extensive resume before you. It was sent to you last night, I believe, by the town clerk. And again, I know that's late for business to be discussed tonight, but he accepted our offer yesterday morning at 7:30. And by the time I had an opportunity to meet with him in the afternoon and advise the other candidates orally of the decision that was made, I could not inform you in good conscience without informing the other candidates for the position first. So that was the delay over the course of yesterday. The charter, as you know, is silent with respect to any process that has to take place with these appointments. It simply says the town manager appoints and the town council can veto within 45 days or the next council meeting. So I took it upon myself to establish a quasi-advisory committee. And I think I mentioned some of this last week, where I reached out to a police professional, to someone who has a school history in the town of East Long Meadow, and a school committee member, as well as an educator. I reached out to the business community. I reached out to the school superintendent to get input from the high school principal as well as the middle school principal about youth interests and issues. And I tried to consolidate all of those opinions in the context of preparing a list of roughly 18 or 19 questions that were reviewed by the former police chief in Springfield, Tom Fitzgerald, and Rich Fischero and myself, as well as Elaine Grimaldi. And we asked all the same questions to each candidate. We conferred after the interviews were over. We gave each other feedback. We vetted their resumes. We vetted their references. We reached out to their references in advance of the interviews to get a preliminary indication of what the individual's character and experience was like. And I think if you've had the opportunity to take a look at Mark's resume, you will see a tremendous amount of education. He is currently the deputy chief in Greenfield, as I said, and has been since 2014. As he oversees a department of 34 officers, 10 civilian dispatchers, and 3 civilian staff. He often acts as the acting chief. He has, what impressed me significantly and especially, is all of his training experience. He's been involved with the Municipal Training Academy for police officers. He's been on the opioid task force in Franklin County. He's dealt with domestic violence and sexual assault task forces in Franklin County. I can go on and on, but you can certainly read his resume. He also has great experience in grant writing. He's got some experience in budgeting, municipal budgets. He has experience with civil service. Greenfield has exited from the civil service department, so he was instrumental in that process. He's all about training the junior officers. He said to me more than once, he is a strong advocate for promoting from within, and he sincerely hopes that over the course of his career in East Long Meadow, he could honestly say at the end of his tenure that the next chief should come from within, because there'll be opportunities presented. He's all about public outreach. He's got a couple of small kids, 10 and 7. They go to a charter school. He's indicated a willingness to relocate to East Long Meadow. He's already been in town twice looking at real estate. He's humble. He's sensitive. He's thoughtful. He's the full package. He ticked all the boxes. His answers to our questions were very self-effacing. I thought they were very genuine and sincere. He demonstrated integrity. Some of the questions, you haven't seen the questions, I realize, but they were tailored to elicit certain responses from the individual's background and experience in law enforcement. And he told of one episode in particular where he had to discipline someone who had been a longtime friend of his, who had done something that was egregiously wrong, gave the opportunity to that officer to correct the situation. He failed to take it, gave him a second opportunity, he failed to take it, had to recommend him for discipline, severe discipline, was supported by the mayor in Greenfield in that circumstance. And he said that relationship remains fractured to this day, but he said, despite all of that, he did it because he knew it was the right thing to do, and he would do it again if called upon. So I personally, in a short period of time, was quite impressed, which is not to say the other candidates weren't good. Everybody, I think, put their best foot forward, but Mark was, in my estimation, the best candidate, and he would serve the town of East Long Meadow very well for years to come.
Thanks, Mary. I would ask, does anyone have any questions for Mary regarding the entire procedure from start to finish? I believe she covered it pretty well, but there were other applicants, and this would be a good time as long as we're not getting into areas that would warrant an executive session. So I'll start with Ralph.
Mary, you may have said it, I may have missed it. How many total applicants were there? I mean, did we get a good response, or was it very limited, or?
We had 9 altogether. We interviewed 6.
Okay.
I was a little disappointed with the number, frankly, but I reached out to police personnel with whom I'm friendly, trying to solicit some applications to at least spread the word, and it was not successful.
I would just remind everyone that, if we were to phrase it in percentages, hopefully we're 90% there, but obviously this is still contingent on contract negotiations between Mary and the applicant. And the applicant was made aware that we, the council, do have a grace period to veto. And if we were to exercise that option, it would take place within 45 days or our next council meeting, whatever occurred first. So, like I said, I believe we're 90% of the way there. It'll be interesting to hear how the contract negotiations play out, and we'll see where we go from there.
Mike, if I could add to the point that you just made, Deputy Chief has a 60-day notice requirement in his current contract in Greenfield. However, his chief fully supports this promotional opportunity for him and has already asked the mayor to relieve him from that length of notice period. And he's supposed to get back to me as soon as he knows, but he's quite certain that he'll be granted relief from that. And I was anxious to avoid the necessity of an interim appointment. But having said that, I wasn't rushing through this process. These interviews took place over 3.5 days with consultation amongst the preparation, the actual interviews, the consultation during, before, and after, interviews with Mark, and so on and so forth. I had intended from the start, if it were possible, to have a decision made, at least on my end, by December 15th, because as you know, Chief DeLesio's desired retirement date is January 15th. And I, for one, think our department needs a smooth transition. And I didn't want to get into an appointment of an interim if that were avoidable. So that's what brings us to today for right now.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Does anyone have, Ralph, I see your hand up again.
Mike, just procedural based on the charter. So tonight is the presentation of the candidate to us. And
Yep.
then we have until the next regular council meeting or 45 days, whichever comes first. I would assume it would be our January meeting, which is January 12th. Is that correct? That's our first regular meeting.
It is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would hope, Counselor, that if you would consider either an earlier date in January, only because of what I just said, that whole interim business and the transition from one chief to another will be made a little more complicated if Mark Wilson isn't, if I don't know he's your choice, or that I don't know that you're gonna veto my appointment. But, I mean, I guess the world wouldn't end if we had to wait till January 12th, but I would prefer not to.
Excuse me, through the chair.
Um,
I've had my hand up for quite some time, and I just wanted to comment that we just received the information last night. And as Ralph said, as part of the procedural process that we always follow, or we should always follow, is we need the opportunity to vet this out amongst ourselves and research it. And my first question to Mary would be, where are these interviews that were taped going to be available to us to observe and listen to?
Well, I think that's what Don Mackey is calling me about. He sent me an email today asking me to get a hold of him tomorrow. So I assume he wants to discuss that. They weren't going to be made public. Obviously, if the council wants to look at them, that would be fine. The only reason they were taped is because 3 of our 6 finalists had COVID symptoms or had COVID exposure, and that's why they were done on a tape. Otherwise, they would have been done in person in my office.
Okay.
So I'll probably know tomorrow, Tom, after I hook up with Don.
Okay. Any other, Pat?
Mr. President, I can certainly see why Mary would want to appoint Chief Williams. But speaking strictly for myself, and as just one of 7, I'm a little surprised at the manner in which this appointment was made. The new chief seems like a fantastic find, but that's not my issue. Nor is there any question in my mind that the town manager's process in making this appointment was fully in accordance with the charter's terms, as I understand them. We have a strong town manager charter. What the appointment was not very transparent to the council and didn't seem to me very collegial. It's true that the manager's absolute right under the charter to determine how she will search for, interview, and vet the candidates for police, fire, or DPW heads. But nothing would have prevented her from describing the process to us at some point earlier, what she was doing. It's the manager's right to determine how urgent filling the position was, but nothing really would have prevented her from sharing the reason for that urgency with us. She has now described it. She has the absolute right to select a single candidate and present the candidate to us, take it or leave it, according to the charter. But she might have suggested an executive session at which she could have confidentially described her 2 or 3 top candidates to us and her top choice. It's her responsibility to do all the background and reference checks, but nothing would prohibit her from sharing these documents or a summary along with the candidate's application to us. This is one of the most important jobs in the town, and we share the responsibility together with Mary for town leadership. As a town leader, it just would have felt nicer to me to be a little more informed and feel a little more involved, even if I wasn't. That's all. As far as Chief Mark is concerned, at first blush, he seems like a fantastic candidate, and his use of the term adept in his resume really got to me, along with his magna cum laude and his on-the-job deputy chief training, of course. I have already begun my due diligence on his appointment and have 2 favorable responses already. I would like to see whatever information she has in terms of the vetting that was done by her group as well. But I understand that's not necessarily our right to receive. That's my input. Thank you.
May I respond to that, Mike?
Absolutely.
Geez, Pat, I think that I addressed some of those things last week at our meeting when I thought I addressed in my town manager's report what the process was going to be in terms of the vetting and the questioning and the resume collecting and so on and so forth. So if I were remiss in not being more thorough there, I'm sorry for that. The other point I think needs attention in light of your comments is, you know, I announced Jeff D'Alessio's retirement a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I think it was very shortly after he told me. And so I guess in my way of thinking, I had informed the council that there was going to be an urgency in terms of appointing a new chief because of the unexpected announcement by Chief D'Alessio. And thirdly, as you accurately point out, the charter is dead silent. So I think if anybody on the council wanted a different process, the time to inform me of that would have been before the process began, because I certainly would have complied with your wishes had I known. I did not have any intention of having open interviews, having a whole conference room full of people. That would not have been my choice, and it wasn't my choice. There's no attempt to hide anything from you, but the council charter, the town charter specifically says I appoint. So if you don't have the confidence, let's say, that the appointment process was thorough enough or made known to you in advance, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I don't know how that could have been avoided absent your or somebody on your council informing me that that's what you wanted to see as the process. Because I was operating on a blank easel with no guidance other than one sentence out of your charter. So.
Okay. Any other questions on this subject matter? Okay. We're going to continue on under new business with the town manager performance evaluation. I believe everyone knows that in order to be in compliance with the charter, this review needs to take place. And we had an evaluation committee formed. The chair is at the committee and the members of that committee. I'm not going to get into great detail, but all the results were tallied. And once they were tallied, I went in last week and sat with Mary and went through all of them line by line. We had a discussion. We both were on the same terms. Those documents were signed. One set of documents is with the personnel director. Mary has a copy, and our committee is very well and has copies of those results, and I believe you do as well. I would ask anyone from the committee, I can start with the chair or anyone who participated on that committee, if there's anything else you'd like to add to this comment.
Yeah, Mike?
Tom?
Yeah, just a comment, and this is for Mary's benefit. There were many suggestions made. There were 34 that were, actually 36 that were compiled from all the counselors' input. And many of them did not rise to the level of a goal, but many are things of importance that you need to pay attention to. And I'm sorry to hear that you were not involved or known or did not know about the council's concern over the hiring of the police chief, because 6 out of 7 counselors shared that same concern and would like to have seen something done differently. And I believe the council president spoke to you about that prior to your starting the interviews. And there were a number of other, I'll call them comments, that are for conversation because they don't rise to the level of goals. But again, they're things of importance that the counselors had all listed in their own opinion as things of value and things of importance that you as the town manager need to at least know that we're concerned about or pay attention to.
Yeah, I got those yesterday, Tom, after all the interviews were done and the process was complete. Mike was in my office. No, I'm sorry, it was Friday, Mike? Not yesterday,
It was-
Friday.
I don't know.
Friday. So by Friday, everything was fait accompli. So to your point, I guess I understand what you're saying, but I was not aware of any of that until Friday, in terms of the comments that don't rise to the level of a goal or the comments that need conversation or whatever. So that's when they were presented to me. After the fact, is my point. It was done and over.
Okay, my screen's jumping around. Are there any other comments on this subject?
So,
Yeah.
Mike, I just throw something out there. On this,
Hold on one second. I want to find it here. Go ahead, Ralph. There you go.
okay. On this performance goal, one of the things I had stated was, as I'm going through looking at this, whether she achieved it, in progress, defer it, I'll be truthful. A lot of them I didn't know. The only way I know if it happened is if Mary lets us know and tells us. To me, that performance evaluation was more of a self-evaluation, that she should have been looking at it and just saying, hey, I've achieved this. I mean, that's just my thought process on this. I mean, there was a couple of them I knew, most of them I had no clue. So I just hope going forwards that we tweak it, we adjust it. And like I said, I think I told Tom this, I think a self-evaluation based on what we set would be awesome. So that Mary can tell us how she's doing and where the problems lie. I mean, we can't help unless we know. So
I think Mike through the chair, I think Kathy wants to speak on that since she was instrumental.
I see that, and I'm waiting for Ralph to finish. Once we're complete, yeah.
I'm good, but Kathy's muted. There you go.
I appreciate Ralph's comment, and to that, the committee will meet again after the holidays and absolutely be recommending as we go forward that there should be, and there should have been right from the get-go back to 2017, there should have been a self-evaluation component to it. So that clearly will happen, as well as once we vet some rating systems, we're going to, as a committee, bring those forward to you so that they're much more concrete and definitive in how you might rate a particular quality or a particular aspect of the manager's performance. And I would also recommend that on that list that Tom has referred to as suggested goals, suggested is the operative word here. In thinking about it some, since that document was given to Mike to share with Mary, I think it makes as much sense as does the self-evaluation piece to have the president meet with the manager and review the suggested goals and get the manager's input as well, so that the goals that ultimately are agreed on are mutually agreed on, so that we're not, neither side's working at cross purposes.
Okay, thanks. Marilyn?
I thank you. Kathy basically covered everything I was going to say, but I just want to make another comment, please. You know, as counselors, and when we're in the middle of a process like this, everything I'm hearing is so negative. And, you know, prepared statements that are being brought to a meeting that were written before we even heard what Mary had to say is not fair to her. This is a woman that has worked tirelessly for our community. No sooner had she been appointed to the position when she was thrown into the middle of COVID, and has worked extremely hard. And I just become a little bit defensive when we all sit here and say, well, you should have done this, or maybe, you know, I'm all for constructive criticism, but I do believe we need to start off with thank you, Mary, for doing an amazing job. for this town and for our town hall employees, for all that you've done. You know, even the police chief search, I know the issues that she fell into in the middle of it, between COVID, between the HR director not being able to participate completely because of health issues. I mean, it's been nonstop, one issue after another. And someone needs to recognize how hard she's working for us. And I do. Thank you.
Kathy?
To that end, and I would echo what Marilyn has just said, and just as an FYI, if as it relates now to our manager's ability to choose a candidate, if you think back to her resume, she was a police commissioner in Springfield. I think we owe her the respect of trusting her instincts on that, and that's just a personal feeling I feel needs to be on the record, as well as for the public who ultimately will watch this video if they're not joining us through Facebook. I know Mike did not go through step by step the actual evaluation, and that's not expected. But I want the public to understand that there was overwhelming approval of the manager's performance over these last 6 months. And yes, there's a variety of suggestions and comments, and yes, we're all entitled to that, but it needs to be said publicly that this manager is doing the job and doing a fine job of it.
Thank you. Pat?
Pat, you're muted.
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 There you go.
I got knocked out when a phone call came in and everything went kerflooey. What Councilor Hill is saying is absolutely true. The outstanding, I was one of those that wrote a glowing thank you, and to the 6 other councilors that said what a wonderful job we see. And it's true that all of these suggestions were not negative in any way. They were positive things that could be done. And I truly echo Councilor Hill. I would point out that in terms of my prior comments, I never meant to indicate that I thought she was doing anything wrong. I thought I went out of my way to say that she was doing everything right. I just hadn't heard it until a week ago and had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. And so I merely pointed out that it might have been nice to know earlier than a week, but I thought that she did a wonderful job and she had every right to do it. I just felt left out. That's not a criticism. It's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If we move to summary action items for next meeting, what crosses my mind is our January 15th meeting, and it corresponds back into any conflicts or contracts being negotiated that Mary might want to share with us. So even if we, I would say that I believe, and maybe somebody can let me know, I believe we have to meet on the second Tuesday of January. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a mandatory meeting. That's where I'm going with that, but nothing would stop us from meeting on the 5th if any information became available, and I will be talking to Mary, and if that happens, everybody will be have plenty of warning to try to make a date like that. That's what I feel would be the level of importance to, if we have the right individual, to bring this individual on sooner than later. And we would want to close the gap with the time frame so that he could probably work with our existing chief for a while, to get acclimated to the environment and the staff. Does anyone else have any action items at this point? Ralph?
Mike, I just want to comment on that. The charter's pretty specific that it's our regular meeting. Our regular meeting is the second Tuesday of the month. It's not at the next town meeting, town council meeting. It's at the next regular town meeting. So when we add meetings in, those are considered special meetings. The regular meetings, as per our bylaw, is the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so that being said, we could still meet on the 5th if she had any other information, or any one of us had information that we want to disclose prior to the regular meeting once we close the process. So we'll keep that date open, but I see 2 hands up as well. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. I believe that while Councilor Page is correct, I think one way to avoid the problem might be for us to take a vote on the 5th to, I can't say approve, but to recognize or acknowledge the appointment, which would, I think, eliminate the possibility of the veto beyond that point. I could be wrong, but that would be one way to help Mary through the issue.
Okay.
And I also have a question, and that is, will you be sharing the evaluation that was signed with the council?
You mean the contract, the contract between the chief and Mary that they're working on?
No, the performance goals.
You have it.
They have been shared.
They were sent to us, Pat, in our packet.
Well, I saw many, many different iterations of them. I'm not certain what Mike indicated that Mary and he signed together or agreed on together.
Well, I'm going to defer to, I can defer to Tom or Kathy because they sat on that, but I can say, rather than go over the 6 goals that the evaluation committee compromised down, we spent the time to go over all 34 so that she knew exactly what each and every one submitted. And I'll let Kathy elaborate on that. I see her hand up.
Thank you. I think what Pat's saying is, my point was that I think the missing piece here is that Mary ought to have some feedback. Now that she's seen the sheet of recommendations or suggestions, that you and she can agree on what are the 6 reasonable goals going forward. And what Pat, I think, is asking is, will you simply report that back to us?
Thank you, Keith.
I will.
And if I can continue as it relates to the recommendation for the next police chief, does it make any sense for us, as we do our due diligence, if we have an issue that we feel needs to rise to being addressed in a meeting, can we just let our president know that? Or to the contrary, if you're comfortable with it and have no issue, to let Mike know that as well, and that might avoid the January 5th meeting. It might be that simple.
Right, and I would add too that you know, Mary will have additional information because as she meets with the applicant, we'll know, you know, are they in close proximity to agreeing on a contract or not? So, you know, based on what the information Mary has on contract negotiations and any information after this council does its due diligence, we can kind of reserve the 5th to cover that if needed. So,
Mike,
yes.
I would be disinclined to enter into any further conversations with Deputy Williams in the absence of knowing whether or not you're going to veto him. I think it would be pointless to discuss compensation or relocation or anything else until I know he's someone that you're going to not veto, for lack of a better expression. I think the conversations about his contract have to be suspended until he knows he's going to be the chief. I don't know, you can disagree with me, but I can't see engaging him in conversation about how much money is it gonna take or how many months do you need to relocate when, and your body can come back in 3 weeks or 45 days and say, nah, we don't want him. So,
Okay, if
you know what I mean?
I do, and if I was to play devil's advocate and we turn things around, if we didn't veto him and you came to us and said, I have an applicant, he decided he's not gonna move to town and he wants $200,000 a year, we would have lost our opportunity to veto that.
But I already know what he wants, pretty much.
Okay, so is any other discussion on this subject or? Okay, well, we don't need the reserved executive session at this time, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. I know there's no further discussion on this, so we'll start with a roll call vote with Ralph,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Don.
Yes, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. You too. Tom,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. We are adjourned at 7:45. See everyone next year.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Yep.